Resume recording. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Today, I want to really focus in on Sora and make sure that everyone here feels really comfortable just using the tools and features built into Sora. But also, I want to give you some ideas of ways that you can support your classroom teachers, give you some ideas for ways that might make Sora a little bit easier for your younger kids to use, that kind of thing. So hopefully you'll get some new information today. And if you have any questions, definitely please chat those in. I will try to keep an eye on the chat as much as possible. And if it takes me a second to get your question, I apologize. So purpose of today, I definitely want everyone to come away just feeling really confident using Sora and also introducing it to both your students and your teachers. Ideally, I think the more, groups of people, whether that's, reaching your students, if it's reaching parents, the more of those kind of groups of people that you can reach, the more you're going to see Sora get utilized. It's going to click with people at different times. So it is one of those things that's important to keep talking about and, sharing with people. Hopefully after today, you'll see how Sora can be used in the classroom and to support learning. And I'm also going to spend some time just talking about help resources and also promotional ideas or, ways to kind of get the word out about Sora in addition. So as I mentioned, please do chat in your questions and I will do my best to keep an eye on the chat today. And then after today, you will have access to the recording of this. And then I'm also going to be sharing a PDF of my slides so that you'll have all the links to things that I talk about throughout the slides. I've linked to additional help resources on every single topic. So I think you'll have plenty of things to refer back to as well. Okay, so I'm going to try to do a poll today. You should see this pop up on your screen. The question in the poll is, how familiar are you with Sora? So options are, I'm not sure what Sora is. I haven't signed in yet. So I know what it is, but I haven't signed in. I've signed in once or twice. I am somewhat familiar with Sora, or I use it often. I use Sora often. So I'll give you 15 seconds or so to put in your answers here. And I will wrap this up in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And hopefully you can see the responses. I'm sharing the results here. So we've got someone here who isn't sure what Sora is. So welcome. I'm so excited that we get to share this with you. I've got someone who is somewhat familiar and then quite a few people who use it often. So hopefully even those of you who use it often will still learn something today. All right. So let me just start with the basics. What is Sora? Sora is, in our opinion, the best way for students to access digital content, but it's absolutely the best way to access the digital library that SCDC is providing, and then also if you're in Washington County. So some of you may still be using or familiar with our older platform, and Sora is new-ish, but it's been out now 2 full years. We do anticipate at some point that Sora will be the only way to access the digital collection. So I'm really encouraging people to learn Sora, focus on it, teach it, and kind of do away with the older platform as much as possible. So in terms of how to get students started with Sora, initially, you have the option. I think many of you have access to Sora through maybe Canvas or a learning management system. So students should hopefully have, easy ways to find Sora and click on it. And many of them are set up with a single sign-on, so they just click it and they should already be signed in. However, you do have the option to access Sora on any kind of personal device, a home computer, that kind of thing. So it's important to also know, in addition to maybe the ways that it's linked in a learning management system and that sort of thing, it's just an app. So on any phone, if you've got an iPad, you can just go to your app store and download the Sora app. Just search Sora it'll pull up and you download it just like any other app. It's free. And then I'll show you just in a sec how to sign in from there. Or if you're on, a laptop, your Chromebook, home computer, any of those, kind of more non-app type devices, you can simply go to the website version, which is soraapp.com. It does have the 2 A's in the URL there. So soraapp.com and the Sora app itself are really almost completely identical. So no matter what device students are using to access their Sora account, it's going to look and feel the same. So that's a huge benefit with Sora and makes it really easy, especially for your younger kids, to really know what to do. It doesn't matter if they're at school and they, are doing something on their Chromebook, then they come home and they want to read on their mom's phone. It's going to be the same, and it syncs across those devices really easily. So there's, no reason why they won't see the same books, no matter what, where they are or how they're accessing their Sora account. Once they get to that main page, you've downloaded the app or you go to soraapp.com, you're going to search for your school. For those of you that are part of the SEDC Service Center, you're part of that group, you can just search for Southwest Educational Development Center. You should be able to also just search for your school and it will pull up under that SEDC umbrella. So you can see on the screen here, I search for Vista School and it pulls up as, underneath SEDC. And then you would just click, this is my school. If you're in Washington County, you can search for your individual school building, or you can search for Washington County School District. It doesn't make any difference how you search. If you're getting to, basically, regardless of what you search, you're getting to the larger shared collection sign-in page. A lot of people worry that if students search for their school instead of the district or that sort of thing, that it somehow skews what they have access to, and that is not the case. So it doesn't matter, they just need to get to the correct sign-in page. So then if you're part of SEDC or actually Washington County, I am almost positive that 100% of you would then use your email credentials. So I'm pretty sure we authenticate with Google for everyone. So they would just see the option to sign in with their Google credentials, and then they'd be in. So that's kind of the basics. From there, we're hopeful that once you're in Sora, you can just find a book really easily and start reading. So the goal with Sora is just to make it super easy for a student to get from, being in Sora to reading a book. So hopefully that you'll find that to be the case. And there are lots of things you can do with Sora, including just switching the language interface. There are 10 different language options, and I'll show you how to do that today. I think it should be pretty easy to browse and just borrow books and read them. There are tools, including the ability to define words right within a book. You can customize your reading experience. There are offline reading options, and you also have the option within the text not only to define words, but also highlight passages, attach notes to those passages, export them and share them with your teacher. And last but not least, you can absolutely access the public library in Sora as well. And Sora does filter that to be age-appropriate content from the public library. So that's a huge benefit that everybody here should have access to, and hopefully we'll be able to share with your students after today. So I'm going to jump into Sora itself. So I'm already signed in. I'm actually in my demo account. So this isn't exactly what you would see, in your own Sora collection, but it's going to look and feel the same, very similar. So if you're part of SEDC, you would see, Southwest Educational Development Center here. If you're part of Washington County, you would see that instead of Blue Sky Academy. So I'm in Sora, and from here, the basic part is just that you can scroll through, look for books, find something that's interesting to you. You have the ability to search for a specific book if you're interested, or you can just browse these collections. And then these collections are built by whoever manages your consortium's account. So these are customizable. There's something that can be added to. So I think if you have requests for, I'd like to see a collection geared toward this specific subject area. My assumption would be that the administrator for your, Sora account would be happy to put something like that out there. These collections, you can scroll through them, or what I prefer is just to click on this collections button. And especially for, kids that are pretty good at reading, they just get a list of all those collections that they can search in right there. From here, I want to make sure I show you some of the key tools and features that are available just in Sora itself. So you've got your main menu here. And the first thing, and I feel like this is one of those things that if you're showing kids Sora, this should be the first thing you kind of help them walk through so that they're just set up going forward. They have this option to add a library. So when you click on that, for everybody here, it should be the Beehive. It used to be Utah's online library, and now they've changed the name to Beehive Library Consortium. So you just search for that, say, this is my library. And then you've added the library into Sora, but you're not yet signed in. So in order to be prompted to sign in, you would just have your kids, really look for any book that is of interest to them. It's not super important. Ultimately, what we're trying to do is just get the prompt to sign into the collection. So you would click borrow or place a hold on a book. From here, I believe, so everybody that's part of SCDC, I'm pretty sure, Chris, tell me if I'm wrong.
Yes,
is able to now sign into the Beehive Consortium with those same Google or email credentials that your students are already using to sign into Sora. So this is a huge benefit for you guys out in Utah. Washington County is not quite set up with this, but it's going to be any day. Well, it is listed, so maybe it is. Well, maybe it is. Maybe I didn't get the memo. So basically, from here, you're going to want to have your students select their school district or school from the drop-down. So let's say you're in Beaver County. They will get that exact same sign-in option that they had when they first signed into Sora, and that's going to allow them to sign into that Beehive Library Consortium. So once they've signed in, they will easily be able to flip back and forth between the two libraries. And when they search for a specific book, they just need to click this search all of my libraries option. And whatever they search for, they're going to pull up options from both. So let's say I'm looking for birds, something on birds. First, I'm going to get results from my school collection. So for me, it's Blue Sky Academy. But as I scroll down, and this is true even though I'm not technically signed into Beehive, I then get results from the Beehive Library Consortium. So right in Sora, they're going to be able to find books from both places and easily be able to borrow from both, and no need for a library card anymore. But just know that Sora is set up to limit students to age appropriate content. So your younger readers are going to be limited to juvenile content. Middle grades should have, additional content in addition to that, and then your older students would have access to even more. So just know that Sora is a really safe place for, your students to access the public library, and it blocks mature adult content for everyone, including teachers. So there really should never be anything that's, extremely inappropriate available in Sora. So, so that's the first thing that I would definitely share with your students and parents. Also in this menu, you've got just a few different options. You've got your general settings, and this is where this is related to if you always read in a Kindle, you can just have it automatically send all your books to your Kindle. I don't usually use that much. I don't have a Kindle, but I'm sure for those of you who are diehard Kindle users, that might be useful. This is where you can change the interface to a different language. So potentially dual language programs might find this interesting to have the students navigate the Sora platform in their language of study. This is one difference between the app and the website currently. The app defaults to the language that's set on your device. So if you were using like your own cell phone, it's probably set to English. Sora would default to English and there isn't a way to change it. That may come at some point, but if you're using the browser version on a computer or Chromebook, you would see this option to change the language. And then you also have the ability to change all the prompts and displays in Sora to the dyslexic font, so that all of the words and collection names and whatnot are in that dyslexic font. That may be helpful for individuals who struggle with dyslexia, because it's heavy weighted top to bottom, left to right, and so it helps those words to stay more fixed on the page. And then also the high contrast setting. This is an accessibility feature that is great for students who have sight impairment, things like that. So those are things that you can share, especially with specific students that might have a need for those tools. So those are your general settings. You also have hold settings. So something that a lot of people don't realize is that when students place a hold on a book, it used to be that the books would just automatically check out to them. And we've actually changed that. So the reason is that it used to, if a student placed a hold on a book, it could, potentially be quite a while before they would actually have access to that book. And so it could be 8 weeks before that book gets checked out to them automatically. And if they don't go into Sora, they never know that they have it. And, there's not a mechanism to notify them via email or anything with Sora. So the book would basically just sit on their shelf for the lending period, 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and then go away. And they might never know it was there. So we removed the automatic checkout. And now what happens is if a student has placed a hold, that book becomes available to them. They still need to go and check Sora. The Sora now gives them 3 days to go ahead and borrow that book. They have the option to go back in the wait line or to go ahead and borrow it. If they go back in the wait line, they're next in line again, but it gives them, a little bit more time to maybe finish up another book. And if they do nothing, then they are given, it's, I think, a 7-day period, then they're put back in the wait line, and that happens maybe once or twice, and then the hold would just get canceled. So they don't lose it by not doing anything if they don't check Sora, but it's a little bit confusing. I'll show you some really great help articles about it, but just know that those books, the students need to come in and kind of regularly check to see if the books they've placed holds on have been made available to them. And if they do have a book available, they'll actually see a bell with a red dot, kind of like, a Facebook notification that tells them there's something that they need to look at. And then when they click on that, it will say, do you want to borrow this book or, go back in the wait line? Here, the hold settings allow them to freeze any hold. So if a book becomes available to them and they have this set to freeze, it will not become available to them. They'll be frozen, and then when their hold state goes back to active, then the book, will become available to them. But freezing your holds is really great if I've placed holds on a bunch of books. I have one of them and I'm right in the middle of it. And if I get another one of these books, I will not have time to read it. You can come in here, freeze your holds for a week, finish up the book you're working on, and then, in another week, you might get another book, filtering back through. So hopefully that's not super confusing. It's a little confusing to me, so I understand if it is. All right, so that's holds, and then download settings. So I mentioned that your students can download books for offline use. So this is amazing, obviously, for kids who maybe don't have Wi-Fi at home, or just have poor Wi-Fi, in their area and that kind of thing, if they're more rural, that sort of thing. So when they do have a Wi-Fi connection, they absolutely have the ability to download the books and then access them once they've left that Wi-Fi connection. In the app, it's really straightforward. If they check out a book, they can make sure that it's fully downloaded while they're on that Wi-Fi connection, and then once they leave the Wi-Fi connection, it's still downloaded to that device and they can read it, regardless. If they're in the browser, they actually just need to favorite Sora. When they would sign into Sora, favorite it, and it's actually going to give kind of like almost like an app option that they can download, and that's how they would then access their books offline. So here is where they can set their download settings. They can set it so that no matter what, as soon as they check out a book, it just downloads right away. Or if they're worried about maybe the space on their device or something like that, or they don't have unlimited data, that sort of thing, they can make sure they can put nothing, and that way, they would only download manually. They would just click on the book and tell it to download if they want to, or they can set it to just, books of a certain size or smaller. So that's download settings. But I really wanted to point out the help within the app. And I don't know how many people are aware of this, but first of all, you've got Sora help. And this is going to take you to some really helpful articles. Like, I'm having a problem. For example, I can't borrow a book. Something about if all the copies are checked out, you can place a hold. So this is actually where I went to kind of better understand how the holds work now that they're not automatic. So diving into these little articles, I think, is a really useful way to just learn better how things work in Sora. Or there is also the option to send a message. We request that they be 13 years or older, or ask a parent to do this. But if a specific person is having technical issues, then they do have this option to actually reach our support team. And then, of course, your option to sign out. Let me just check the chat, because I think there are a few things coming through. Okay. Oh, Chris had some things she mentioned. Okay, so one question was, once a book has been downloaded, does it stay on even after the due date? So actually, my understanding is that there can be this kind of funny thing where if they never reconnect to a Wi-Fi connection, it somehow like stays on that device, but it still somehow becomes available in Sora again. So something about digital checkouts is that at the end of the lending period, they borrow it, they have it for 14 days. It automatically returns after that 14 days. They don't need to do anything. So even if they downloaded it to a specific device, it's still going to return to the digital library and be available to someone else. And it does remove that title from the device. So it's not like they have all these books that have been downloaded that are taking up all this storage, and they have to like manually get rid of it somehow. But I have heard something like kind of funny where I know some people have figured out a way, like if they never reconnect to Wi-Fi, they can still like keep that book on their device. But you didn't hear that here, and I'm going to stop talking about it now. Best kept secret. Okay, so now I'm going to show you just kind of, the 4 tabs. So this was the Explore tab. You've got your menu options, and then you've also got your shelf. So the shelf is a place where you can go see any books that you have checked out or that have been assigned to you. You can see any books that you have on hold, and it should give you a decent estimate of a wait time that you can expect for that book based on how many people are ahead of you in the line. You do have the option to tag different books. So if I saw a book that I'm like, oh, that looks really interesting, I don't really want to read it now, but maybe I want to add it, just tag it as something that maybe I want to check later. I can add it to a list, and you can build all sorts of lists right there. Read later, I'll make that my list. And then when I hit save, now this book is tagged on my read later list. And then you can review all of those lists that you've built and all the books that are on your list here on your shelf. And then the history is just simply a history of books that you've read, checked out, returned, that sort of thing. So it should give you a good rundown of, what books you've enjoyed previously. And then you've got your Me tab. Your Me tab is a place where you can put in your name, kind of customize it a little bit. There are a few different avatars you can pick from. And then your students are going to have this reading data. So it shows them how many books they've opened, how much time they've read in total in Sora, the average time they're spending every time they go into Sora, average time per book, how many days in a row they've signed in, and then the longest streak, days in a row that they've ever signed in. And then what a lot of kids get a kick out of are these achievements. When they first sign into Sora, they're going to get the blast off achievement or badge. saying, good job, you've signed into the app for the very first time. And they have all these different achievements that they can earn. And then we did just add 10 new ones around subjects to try to encourage kids to, check out something in a genre they've never read before, that sort of thing. So read a book about animals, read something about science. They can earn these badges as they read books in these different subject areas. And then you've got your home tab. So on the home tab is where you've got books that have been assigned to you. And books are assigned to you through our marketplace site. So this is something that if you are interested in being able to assign books to students, you would first need to set up an Advantage account for your school or your district. We talked about this in the first session I did, but Advantage accounts are free to set up, free to maintain. Basically, it gives you access to the Overdrive marketplace. And it also allows you to purchase content that is then only available to the students at your school or in your district. So in Marketplace, there's a tool called Title Assignments, and you're able to take any book that you've purchased in your Advantage account and assign it to a specific person. So for example, if you had purchased a copy of The Giver, and then you've got a student who really needs that ebook, you can go into Marketplace, assign it to them using their Sora username. You can give it to them for up to 180 days or any time period, up to that. And when they sign into Sora, it just shows up. It actually will take them straight to the home tab, and it's the first thing they'll see. So they know right off the bat, okay, this book is on my shelf, I've got it. And they can see here, how many days they have left before that assignment runs out. Another nice thing about title assignments is that they can't accidentally return the book. So it's on their shelf for the duration of that title assignment. If you did want it to go back, you'd have to go into Marketplace and change the end date of the assignment. So this has been a super useful tool for students, especially younger kids, but for anybody, just to make sure that every student has a copy. They don't have to go and search for it in Sora. It's just already assigned to them, and they know it's on their shelf. They don't have to worry about hold times or wait times or anything like that. So that's assignments. You've also got just loans. That's books that you've gone through and just borrowed yourself. So these are going to be subject to the typical lending period, probably either 14 or 21 days. And then here is where we see recently defined words, and then also recent notes and highlights. So these are words that I have defined within a book, and also notes and highlighted passages that I personally have, I've highlighted these passages and created notes of my own. These are stored in the individual Sora account. Regardless of whether I have the book checked out to me or not, I have my notes and highlights always. So if I go down here and click See All Notes and Highlights, it's going to take me to a full list of every passage I've ever highlighted in any book. And it also, all the notes that I've attached to those highlights. And if I click, maybe I just want to look at the ones for Animal Farm, I can click on that book cover. It filters them down to just my, highlighted passages and notes for Animal Farm. And then, and this could be really useful to your teachers especially, you have some options to share those notes and highlights. So a student could theoretically, complete an assignment within the book that they're reading. They could identify things, they could, write responses to questions and that sort of thing. And then if they're on an iPad, those types of devices, they would need to share it as a PDF. They'll see like these 3 export options. But if they're on a Chromebook or a computer, they'll also see the option to copy it to a clipboard or to share it out to Google Drive. So those are hopefully really useful and easy ways to share them. They could, turn them in to a teacher by either copying it into an email, sending it to Google Drive and sharing it that way. And if they send it to Google Drive, they also would have the option to open it in Google Docs and edit it and, turn it into something even, better, fix it so that it's something they can turn in as a paper or that sort of thing. So now I want to jump into the books themselves and show you how to do those definitions, notes and highlights, that sort of thing. So I'm going to open up the Giver. Something you might notice, especially if you work with younger kids a lot, there are books that don't allow you to highlight the text, and usually it's more of a picture book type text. Those are what we call fixed layout, and they're, when they're not text-based like this, and they're mostly a picture with maybe just a few words, it's designed in such a way that it is kind of just all a picture, and so it doesn't allow you to change the text size and things like that. But if you're working with especially older students, chapter books, that kind of thing, then you'll always find the ability to highlight passages and attach notes to them. So I'm in the book now, and I just, flip pages. I get this question a lot with classrooms of students who are reading ebooks as a group. Teachers are kind of wondering, it doesn't seem like the page numbers always line up. So how do I get all the kids to the same spot? So one of those ways is in your menu within a book, you've got chapters, and every single one of these is a hyperlink. So if you're starting everybody at chapter 5, you just click 5, and it's going to take me straight to the first page of chapter 5. But let's say we're in the middle of chapter 5 and you really want everyone to start at the spot where it says Jonas looked at his plate right here. So another way to get everybody to the same spot would be have them click this magnifying glass, search for Jonas looked at his plate, and when they hit enter, it's going to bring up any instance of that phrase within the entire book as a hyperlink. So I can just click that and it will take me straight to that spot. So that's another way to get everybody on the same page. So let's say as we're reading along, the teacher has asked, find an example of a place where the student, the author changed his mind, or find an example of certain, type of speech. So all you have to do to highlight a passage is tap and hold, and then you'll just drag over it. When you let go, it gives you highlighting options, a definition option, or a search option. So I'm going to click to highlight this. I can pick different colors. And then if I want to attach a note to this highlighted sentence or passage, I just click note and I get a text box where I can type in, I can identify this as something or just write a response, whatever the case might be. And then when I click done, now my highlighted passage and my note are saved. They're saved in my Sora account, but they're also saved in this book. So when I click on the center of the book, I've got my menu. And now that passage that I just highlighted and that note have become a bookmark. So it shows you I took this one today. Here's my note. That's the passage I highlighted, and it's a hyperlink. So I can click it and go straight to that spot. Also, you've got definition tools within the text. So if someone is reading along and they see a word they don't really recognize, they can tap it and hold. And when they release, they can just define that word right here within the book. So it's going to give me the definition, some synonyms, and then I also have the option, if I want to go out and translate. So if you've got students who are either reading a book in another language, or maybe English isn't their first language, they can, translate this into a different language. They can listen to it if they want to hear how it's pronounced. That opened up in a different tab. So all I have to do is close that out and I'm right back in my book. And then to get rid of this, we'll just drag it down. Some other things, just so your students can customize their reading settings, they can go into the book, they can click reading settings, and this is where they can change the size of the text. They do have, we have accessibility sizes, which just expands the options and makes it so that you can make the text extremely large if needed. And then you've also got your lighting settings, including a high contrast setting. That's also an accessibility feature for students who might be sight impaired. You've also got some different font options, including that open dyslexic font if you want to change the books, into a font that you prefer better than another. So that's an ebook. Chris, are there any questions that I should have answered that came in the chat? I haven't been looking on it.
I don't see any since I've been back, which has just been about 5 minutes.
Okay, cool. So. Thank you. Let me show you an audiobook. So when you open up an audiobook in Sora, you also have some really handy features. And one of them is the ability, the ability to speed it up or slow it down. So some of the same tools and features, you can make a bookmark in an audiobook, and you'll see the option to tie a note to that bookmark. But what I use most often in an audiobook is just this timer. So you have the ability to hit this button and speed up or slow down the playback speed of that audiobook. So for those of you who maybe want to get through an audiobook quicker, speed it up, 1.2, 1.25, something like that. For kids who maybe need a little bit more time to comprehend what they're reading or hearing, you can slow that down for them. So that's an audiobook. You just open it up, hit play, and you're good to go. And then there are also books that are read-alongs. So this is a read-along. And read-alongs are ebooks, but they're read aloud. So they have the audio component as well. And they also come with the ability to speed up or slow down that narration. So if you tap in a read-along, it's in the menu and it's called narration, and that's where you have the option to speed it up or slow it down. So read-alongs are really helpful for, those younger kids who are learning to read. These are great things to have them, do on their own independently. And then these are also super popular with special education classes. So these are, I think there's quite a collection of them already available in Sora. And then if you had, an Advantage account and needed additional read-alongs to support your special education classes or whatnot, you certainly could do that. So the way these work, hopefully you guys can hear this.
No, we can't, but there's a setting in Zoom that you have to use computer audio.
Oh, thank you. Okay, well, regardless,
yeah,
it highlights the words as it's being read aloud, and they're professionally narrated, so it's not like a computer voice. So that's nice too, that, it's a nice experience for students. So that's kind of Sora, some of the tools and features that are available. Got a question, are there read-alongs for middle school and high school? And yes, there are. Chris, do you recall if you've added those specifically for older kids? They would have to, you're muted still.
Yeah, not any upper grades. I really haven't searched for a lot of read-alongs because we purchased a whole bunch in the beginning.
Okay.
So yeah, I'd be curious to know that too. Great question, Melinda.
Yeah, there are obviously a ton for young kids, picture book based, but we do have a selection of books that are appropriate for older students. What you won't find is kind of your classic novels like 1984, To Kill a Mockingbird. Yeah. You're not going to find those in a read-along. In that case, you would want to get an audiobook to support those kids. But there are books that are in the read-along format that are great for older kids. Quite a few from middle school grades, like Star Wars and things like that, and just a few for high school, but they would have to get added to the collection. So I'm not sure what's available quite yet.
Yeah, and I'm happy to search our collection and add some, Melinda, if you think there's a need for that. I often just, kind of tell the kids, well, check it out for your brother and sister and read it to them, so those, because a lot of times you're not going to have an 8th grader is going to want to check out, a real low level book, but if you kind of coach it in a way, you share it with brother or sister or something like that. I always ask, how many of you guys have to babysit your younger brothers or sisters? Well, put them onto Sora and let them go.
That's awesome. Yeah, keep them occupied with that. Read-alongs are great for that. So One additional thing I just wanted to share with you, and this could be useful for your teachers, Sora has advanced search options. So when you click in that search box right here, as if you were going to search for a specific title, you'll also see the advanced search option. And in there, you're able to, limit, if you're specifically just looking for audiobooks, you can set that as your advanced search option and then just click search, and it's going to filter everything so that all you see in your search results is audiobooks. But there are some additional options as well. Subject area, language. So if there are, other language content available, then it'll show up here. So maybe some Spanish. Audience level is just going to be books either tagged as juvenile, young adult, or adult. And then you've also got some handy tools like interest level. So for example, I'm looking at maybe something for an older student. So I want the interest level to be 9 through 12, but I might know that this is someone who has a lower reading level, like a lower ATOS score or a lower Lexile level, for example. So you can do some searches to show you, books with a lower reading level that also have higher interest. I don't know a ton about Lexile, so I'm not sure what'll come up, but so this would pull up books that have that lower Lexile level, but have been deemed of interest to 9 through 12th graders. So that could be a useful way to help, students who have, just struggle with their reading skills and that sort of thing. And then this advanced search is also a way to search for read-alongs. So if you just click the read-along option and click search, it's then going to show me only read-along title options. If you guys have any other questions about Sora, chat those in. And in the meantime, I'm going to hop back over and just share some different ideas. Real quickly, let's do another poll. Okay, so we're going to do this. Next question is, which features will students be most excited to use, do you think? Like if you were sharing Sora with students, what do you think would interest them the most? And there's that question. And then there's also the second question, which is, which feature do you think your teachers will be most excited to use in Sora? So feel free to answer those questions, whatever you think. Creating notes and highlights, reading and listening offline, adding a public library, customizing reading and listening settings, viewing those reading stats on the Me tab, doing the definitions, earning badges. And then what do you think would be most useful to your teachers? All right, and we'll end this here. So it looks like I got one person to participate. What the feature most students will be excited about would be reading and listening offline. So that one would be of interest. Oh, and we got one more, changing the nickname and avatar. And then teachers would potentially be excited about adding that public library and then those customizable reading settings. So yeah, I agree. Thank you for participating. So let's jump into just some ideas for using Sora in the classroom. And again, these will all be available to you with links and things that you can access later on. But using Sora in the classroom is definitely becoming more and more popular. So I wanted to make sure you guys know ways that you can support your teachers and help them use this in this time of so much online learning. First and foremost, our training team has created some training resources that you can use directly with students. So there's a link here to these virtual learning modules, and they look like this. So you've got getting started with Sora for educators and then one for students specifically. So if you've got teachers who are planning on using Sora more with students or just really want to encourage them to be reading more, this would be a great lesson for them to give to students, to have them do getting started with Sora for students. Once they complete that virtual learning module, I think they're going to be really well equipped to do just about anything in Sora. So that would be a great tool to share with them. And if you've got teachers who are wanting to use Sora more, but just feeling kind of nervous or don't feel like they really understand it, the one for educators would be awesome. So these are available in our resource center, which is a website where we house tons and tons of training resources and promotional marketing resources. But you can also just download them by clicking the words "this link." It'll just download those to your computer, and then you'd be able to share them out from there. We do have a kit in our resource center as well of student reading assessments. So if teachers want to borrow these and use them with students, the one for older students is the character journal, and then for elementary students is the story elements page. And then there's a whole kit of student reading assessments that are specific to specific titles. And I know that Chris has seen these, and she made sure that all those books are available in Sora. So if that's something that your teachers might be interested in using, you can download the entire kit from the link in this PDF once you guys have that. Some ideas just for your younger kids. If you work with K-6, one thing that you can do is build collections. So again, you would need an Advantage account in order to do this, or you would be relying on, the person who manages the consortium collection. But curating collections for your younger kids is a great way to help them find the content that you'd like them to find. So building a collection of level, whatever level readers or that sort of thing. And when you're in Sora, every single collection has its own unique link. So when you click on a specific collection, this URL here at the top is a direct link to that collection. So you or your teachers can share that link with students to say, click on this, they'll go straight here and pick a book from this specific collection for this particular book study or assignment. That is also true of specific titles. So if you want a student to read a specific book, go in Sora, click on the book so you get to this page, and this URL is a direct link to that book. So especially if the book is available in simultaneous use, so like unlimited access, teachers could share a link to that specific book to just say, click this link, hit borrow, and let's all read this book together. I do get the question a lot, how do I know if a book is available in simultaneous use? And you can always click on more details on this page. And if it says always available, that means it's a simultaneous use book. So building those collections is super helpful. Sharing a direct link to a book is also helpful. Having books for K-6 that are simultaneous use is huge. Obviously, this requires purchasing. You'd want to have an Advantage account, but there is a lot of content, especially nonfiction, but both fiction and nonfiction geared towards younger kids on all sorts of different subject areas. And it's really nice for teachers to know that a book is, they don't need to worry about how many copies are available. So if you're, wanting to provide that kind of content to your students, that would be something, I could certainly help you with. And then we talked about read-alongs. So read-alongs are awesome, for your younger kids, but also for kids who maybe are learning English, or getting read-alongs in the foreign language that they're studying could also be a really useful tool for them. For your 7th and 12th graders, potentially considering having their novels digitally, the novels that teachers are teaching. There are different ways to do this. Obviously, you could potentially do class sets of digital novels and have a digital copy for every student. And we're seeing that more and more, with this pandemic happening and so many kids learning online, but also just being able to support your teachers by having that book available in some way, having a copy or a couple copies, or having the audiobook available. is a great way to show them, Sora is available. It's a resource that supports what you're teaching your students in the classroom. And I think the nice added benefit is that if teachers see this as a resource that supports their students, they're more likely to talk about it with their students. Students are more aware of what's available to them. And then if they're coming in here, even if it's just, to read their book for class, they're also being exposed to all of these other books that are available to them. And hopefully, something might catch their eye, and we've suddenly turned them into, a lifelong reader. So audiobooks obviously are great. And then we talked about that title assignment tool. That's super useful for your older kids, to make sure that the book they need for class is on their shelf. They have it on the day they need it, and they have it for as long as they need it. And then last but not least, if you do have a need for, digital class sets, our class set rental model is probably the most cost-effective way to go about getting copies of books to every student, on a larger scale. So if you weren't in the first session and have more questions about this option, definitely let me know, or I know Chris would be happy to answer those questions as well. I'm going to skip the poll just because I don't think it was working properly. But next steps. So obviously, if you've never used Sora, download the app or go to the soraapp.com website. If you're ready, definitely share this with your students. And then you can also access our resource center. There's a link here with all the training resources that we talked about, all of the virtual learning kits and classroom resources and whatnot are all housed in our resource center. And then if you need help, you've got this, we have Sora Help as a website, but you've also got that Sora Help right in the app that I showed you earlier. Learning more, you've got a link straight to our resource center here and our Sora how-to videos. The resource center has how-to videos that are super concise, that break it down into, if you're just looking for a how-to video on how do I do highlights and notes in Sora, there's a video for that. So that would be something, you can go and share those how-to videos with your teacher. There are how-to videos for everything. And then obviously I am available. You can contact me anytime. And I would be more than happy to help with whatever questions you have. So I'm right up against the end of this time, but if there are any other questions that I can answer.
Yeah, real quick, I wanted to point out, Noel, first, thank you. That was awesome. Really appreciate all your work on this. Sarah mentioned about collections, and I think you may have touched on this when you covered that, but we've really found a lot of great value. She's using collections for like Battle of the Books, and I've done several. We had one teacher that did 180 books in a year, and so we made that a collection, and she copied the covers of the books, and every time they read the book, they'd stick it on the wall. We had language arts teachers that said this is the required reading for 11th grade language arts, and we just call it the classics. We didn't say required reading. But she's done some too. But we've done World War II and Native Americans, and I think that's where you can really hook the teachers to say, what kind of content are you looking for? Because the teachers think, oh, it's just fun reading, it's just recreational reading. No, it's stuff that they can use in the classroom too. So kind of making that transition is a little bit tough. But also Sarah mentioned something about there's a new model to purchase concurrent users for a certain amount. Is she talking about the cost per click, I wonder, or?
No, yeah. So we do have a brand new lending model that was rolled out literally a couple of weeks ago. And if you have access to Marketplace, you can actually do an advanced search by lending model. So you could go to advanced search, go to lending model, and find books that are available in metered access concurrent users. Basically what you're doing is you're buying that book. It's lots and lots of audiobooks that are available in this option, but there are some ebooks too. You're buying 100 checkouts, and they can be used all at the same time in chunks. So you have 100 checkouts, and then once those 100 checkouts are used up, it expires. But it's a really great option, and they can also be title assigned. So you get 100 checkouts that can be used all at the same time if you want.
So you have to specifically go in and search for those. It doesn't show up when you search for a title that it's available in concurrent or
No, it
anything.
will too.
Oh,
It's
will
just
it? Okay.
that it's not available on a ton of books. So I was just thinking the easiest way, if you're interested in that option, would probably be an advanced search, but absolutely it'll show up as an option if you happen to, pull a book up that's available. So,
All right. Thank you so much, Noel. Thanks to everybody who participated. I hope you found some value today and got some good ideas. Okay.
thank you.
Thanks, Noel.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.